welcome to episode 9 of the Tea and Possibilities podcast. I'm Nikki, and this is a podcast all about knitting, making and crafting in Southsea in Portsmouth on the south coast of England. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at hippie_Nikki and on Ravelry at NikkiHippie. And you can find all the show notes on my blog, and I will link to everything just down there. As always, I want to start by saying a massive thank you to everyone who is taking some time out of their day to have a cup of tea with me, maybe do some knitting. Massive thank you for coming back. Welcome back. And thank you if this is your first time giving the podcast a try. I really do hope you enjoy it. I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a theme of the next few months. Today is quite a busy day. I have got a lot on, and we'll come to that shortly. But the light was actually good, so I have dashed in here. Haven't even stopped to put any lipstick on or brush my hair or anything, and just trying to get the light because last week did look like a Halloween special. I'm really sorry about that. So we're going to try and get this all done with actual good lighting for a change. Today's tea is in my Jamie Oliver Cheeky mug, my Hippie Chick mug, and it is rose and lemonade, and it smells really good. It's quite hot at the moment, so we'll just leave it for a second just to cool down slightly. It's quite a special tea this week. It's by Taylors of Harrogate, inspired by the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. Okay, rose lemonade. And this was actually sent to me by a very sweet lady called Vicky. We will come to the other things she sent me shortly, and it's actually really tasty. I've had a couple of little sips. You know when something's really nice but actually a bit too hot, and you're there going, oh yes, it's really nice, but probably too hot at the moment. So we're going to leave it to cool so that I can drink it without burning my tongue. This weekend is an incredibly busy weekend, so do forgive me if I look a little bit dishevelled. Basically, we have a lot on. We are going to the wedding reception of a very sweet friend this evening. But in the meantime, I am going to get my payday treat. Just the weekend after payday, I always treat myself to a pedicure, and I think I'm going to get sparkly red nails this week, just for Christmas. That's just my little indulgence, and I really enjoy that. So I have to get the podcast out and filmed before I go to that, because as you may have noticed, there is light today. There is light. So we have been kind of running around doing chores this morning, and I suddenly stopped and went, the light is perfect, I need to go and podcast, now. So that's why I've just kind of thrown on my scarf, run a brush through my hair, and here we are, and we're going to go with what we have. We're also doing a lot of prep this weekend for Mini Christmas. Mini Christmas is something we have done for the past 4 years now. This will be the 4th year. And we've got a big group of friends, and it can be quite tricky because December is not that long of a month, to meet up with everyone before Christmas, to do things together, to do presents and all that good stuff. So what we decided a few years ago was we'll just all get together for a weekend. So there's about 8 of us. I think there's going to be 10 this year, and we all contribute to things like we all have some cheese on the Friday night with crackers, and then we have a Christmas meal on the Saturday, and we play games, and we arrange a Secret Santa so that you don't have to buy a present for everyone, but everyone gets a present, which is really nice. So that's next weekend, and Rich, being the amazing chef that he is preparing now by making stocks and making Christmas puddings, Yorkshire puddings, that can be frozen, so it's one less thing to make next weekend. So that's what he's doing while I film. That does unfortunately mean there will not be a podcast next weekend. I'm really sorry guys, but it tends to be quite a busy weekend when we have Mini Christmas, and these are people I don't get to see very often, and I just want to spend as much time as possible with them because they are absolutely lovely people. But there will be a podcast the weekend after. It might not be as long. There may be little snippets of out and about, because the next few weekends I'm seeing a lot of friends. I'm going to help a friend decorate her flat for Christmas. I'm going to go and see a film and have a nice meal with someone else. All those good, lovely things that it's really nice to do around Christmas time. But now let's crack on with Whipped Up. Now, as you can imagine, there is no knitting this week because I have been focused like a laser beam on getting these initials all stitched up and ready to go. I will be seeing the first people who are going to receive them in 2 weeks, and I'm not worried. I'm not worried about getting them done in time, which you'll see why shortly. But then I have 2 more to do after that, one of which is not a finalised pattern. So wish me luck. I thought I'd show you what I've done so far. Unfortunately, I'm still carrying it around in this sad little plastic bag. I had some really lovely messages saying that there are beautiful cross-stitch project holders available on Etsy, and I am going to look once I've finished my Christmas shopping. That's going to be my Christmas treat, because I do think I want to get it in a Christmassy fabric, because I feel like these are going to be a tradition for me. This is the 2nd year I've made some, and I'm already thinking next year I would really love to make one for my baby cousin, who will be 5 next Christmas, and I feel she will be old enough to understand, and I would love to make one as a baby's first Christmas present for my friend's little one. So I feel like they're probably going to be something I make for somebody somewhere every year. I will probably make so many that I will end up with a complete collection of alphabet, so we will see. Last week I showed you this one when it was half finished, and now as you can see it is finished. I'm really happy with it. I think it's going to look really sweet. I'm going to kind of hang it at a slight angle, so maybe put the loop there so it just hangs like that. I did put 3 strands of gold on the snowflake pattern, but funnily enough, I actually, in the design, I don't know if you can see these really thin little gold lines here that I've backstitched on, and in the original design I had the 2 lines with a zigzag in between them, and I thought that looked great on the design, because when I just had 2 lines it looked a bit plain, but actually looking at it when it's stitched up, it's funny how different it can look, and I thought that would be too much. So that is 1 of 5 done, tick. Next up is an almost finished one. It's my first J. There you go. And I don't really know what happened here. I'm going to be honest, because as you can see, the J is quite a lot smaller than the V. And it wasn't until I was halfway through stitching this that I realised, and I thought, do you know what, it doesn't matter, it's big enough. But I'm not really sure what happened, because I made sure that the letters that I printed out were the same size, so that when I transferred them to graph paper they would be the same size, and they would be the same size when I transferred them to computer. And it looked fairly big on the computer, it looked the same size, so not sure what happened there. Not going to complain because it meant it was quicker to stitch. This one I've done little silver baubles all over the tree, and I actually did the metallic silver before filling in the tree so that I wouldn't have silver thread crisscrossing all the way along the back. It's more encased now, so as you can see that's the back. And I'm not backing them with anything, so I do want to keep the back as neat as possible. But as you can see, it's more enclosed than it would have been, so it's not anywhere near as messy. I've just got to do the backstitch outline on this one and it's done. That'll only take me an hour or so, and then I can make a start on the 3rd one that needs to be delivered. So I have absolutely no worries whatsoever about them arriving in time. My only concern is the sizing. These are going to 2 different people, so it's not an issue, but the other letter I'm doing is going to be in the same home as this one, and I just don't want them to look super different. So I may have a little think about that one before I start stitching it. Not entirely sure what happened there. Note for next year, maybe start these a little bit earlier so you've got time to play around with them. But you know, who wants to be stitching Christmas in July? It's really nice to be stitching Christmassy bits and bobs when it's really cold. Another thing that I might do on this, I might, when I've finished all the black outline, have a play with connecting the dots with little silver backstitch, so it looks like fairy lights rather than just baubles. So I'm going to have a play with that and see what it looks like. And next time you see me, all 3 will be finished. And actually they might be delivered, so I don't know if you'll see them, but I will definitely get some video of them so that you will see them finished. And I will report back on the strange incident of sizing. So yeah, I will let you know about that. Knitting wise, there is going to be some content next time, I promise. If only because I will be opening up my advent calendars. So the middle of next week is the 1st of December, which means I get to crack open all 4 of my advent calendars, which means I've got some mini skeins to play with. So I'm really looking forward to sharing what comes out of my advent calendar with you and what I do with it. I'm almost certain that my opal ones are all going to end up in my Cozy Memories blanket. I remember seeing somebody on Instagram last year, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was, but she made scrappy socks. So she would get every skein, knit as far as she could to the end of it, and then keep going, and she would make loads and loads of scrappy socks out of them, and they looked amazing. They were so good. But I'm not really a sock knitter. I'm trying. I've got some higher sharps so I can have a go at magic loop when I've got my deadline knitting done, and my deadline making, I should say. So fingers crossed, this time next year I could be an amazing sock knitter and I will be making scrappy socks. But for this year, I think they are all going to end up in my Cozy Memories blanket. And I'm not sad about it because I love that blanket, and I just think it would be really lovely to have these little Christmas memories in it. So there'll be, you know, the one that I knit at Mini Christmas, the one that I knit on the train to London, the one that I knit while me and my friends watched Elf, the one that I knit in the car to Cornwall. We're definitely not taking a bus because that's madness. You know, so I've got all these beautiful memories. So they're definitely going in there. There will be some knitting content, I promise. Do I protest too much? Is this too much? Now, I alluded to a little gift that I received in the post, and I would just like to share it with you because it is so, so lovely. Vicky of Vicky Bird Designs sent me a message. We met at the flock party, which was thrown by Love Knitting a few weeks ago, and she sent me a message on Instagram to ask if I would like to read this book. It's To Die For by Lucy Sigel, and the tagline is fashion wearing out the world. And she mentioned, did I want to read this, because I've been blogging a lot and she'd read my blogs about, you know, how I want to make better choices when it comes to what I buy, not just in clothes, but in everything. I want to have a positive impact on the world and not a fast and cheap one. And Vicky asked if I wanted this book because after meeting at the flock party, she had a look at my blog and she noticed that I blogged a fair bit about wanting to make better choices when it came to the money I spend and where I spend it. I had watched at the beginning of the year a documentary called True Cost, which I will link to in the show notes, and I do urge you to watch it. It's not a comfortable watch in any way, but it is incredibly interesting, and I think that we should be aware of what our money is going on and what it is doing, because the true cost of fashion is incredibly high. And I don't just mean in poorer countries, you know, it's affecting the Midwest of America. You know, it's really interesting and actually quite horrifying. So that's why I've got a much smaller wardrobe. That's why I don't buy very many clothes now. I'm very careful where I do spend my money. So yeah, I'm actually really interested to read this book. I'm hoping there are some tips in here for how to find good places to buy from and things like that. And I do know there is a chapter in here called Woolly Thinking, which is all about wool and the UK wool market. So that's particularly interesting to me. So I'm really looking forward to reading this book. Why am I mentioning this in Whipped Up? Because I don't have a stash enhancements section. Perhaps I will at some point in the future. But as well as sending me that book and this lovely tea, which is bright pink now. I wish you could see, it's really bright pink, and almost cool enough to drink without burning my tongue. But she also sent me a woolly treat. Look at this! It's a little skein of Christmas. She sent me a little card as well, thank you. But she didn't actually say in the card what the fibres are. I think it's wool. I don't know. I will message her and find out and pop it in the show notes. But isn't that beautiful? So this is going in my Cozy Memories blanket. This is going to be the next square, I think. And that's just really kind of you, Vicky, and thank you so much. You didn't have to do that at all, but I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Now, there is not a Goal Power segment this week, and I was really hoping there would be after talking last week about the Christmas planner idea I had. I went away, as I said, and ordered another bullet journal in red, just as I wanted, for Christmas, and this is what arrived. It's very nice. It's very Christmassy. It's far too small. So this is going back, and I am trying to track down one that is not this small, because this is great for popping in your handbag, and I am considering maybe the next bullet journal I get that I use every day for my calendar and things, I'm considering getting this size because it is probably easier to carry about than the one I've currently got, and I could maybe do maybe adjust my calendar for the size, but it's not going to be big enough for logging Christmassy bits and bobs. I want something nice and big, so I'm going to try and find a red one elsewhere. If anyone knows a good place to buy these, Lectum 1917, I'm sorry I've massacred that, but this really cool notebook, please let me know, because this is being returned, unfortunately. Sad face. There will be a Christmas planner. It may be next year's Christmas planner, but there will be one at some point. But let's just take a swerve around the utter lack of Goal Power and get started with Here Be Spoilers. Now, last week was amazing because I went to see Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and I was so excited for this, so excited. And we checked the times and we went to see one. I think we went to see the 3:45 showing, and we got there and the seats were rubbish. They were like right under the screen, so you'd have been like that to the screen, and I hate that because you're kind of staring straight up and you miss a lot of the detail. So that's no good. So we bought tickets and came back an hour later. I was pretty much at that point vibrating with excitement. I was just like, I can't believe I'm seeing another Wizarding World film. I'm so excited. Of course, I wore my Weasley jumper. In fact, would you like to see my Weasley jumper? Should I go and get it? I'm going to go and get that. Here it is. This is my Weasley jumper, which I finished shortly after moving to Portsmouth towards the beginning of the year. This is Rowan tweed, I believe it was. It's quite tweedy, which is why I'm assuming it's the tweed one, in teal. And I did the initial in Debbie Bliss Blue Face Leicester in the buttermilk shade. For those of you who are not Harry Potter fans, was very inspired by the jumpers mentioned in the book that Fred and George wear. They have blue with a yellow initial. I'm going to just put that around there we go. Which is what I decided to go for. And this is so warm. It is so warm. I didn't wear a jumper. I just threw it on over my shirt and I was warm as toast. This is from the Charmed Knits books. It's the Weasley sweater by Alison Hansel, and I will link to it in the show notes. And I'm incredibly proud of this. This is going to be my Christmas jumper. I'm going to wear it when I'm cold, so we don't have to put the heating on as much. I'm going to wear it when we go walking in Cornwall, and I'm just really happy with it. The only thing I will say is the Rowan is quite hairy. And I've got this weird thing with hairy wool where I'm always worried that I'm going to be eating something and some of the hairs are going to come off and go in my sandwich. which is a weird fear to have. I totally understand. But yeah, this is my only concern with this lovely, lovely jumper. Probably should have worn it really, shouldn't I, for the podcast? Probably should have worn it for this segment at least, shouldn't I? But yeah, this is what I wore going to see Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And in the cinema, they had one of those amazing like diorama cutout posters where you could go and stand in the middle of it and be surrounded by all the characters and get your photo taken. And of course, it was filled with children because it was a Sunday evening and I couldn't get my photo taken in my Weasley jumper. I mean, you know how sad I am about this, don't you? Like, I wanted that picture, and if I thought Rich would indulge me, I'd be like, let's go back to the cinema to get my picture taken. But I think that's probably pushing it, isn't it, really? But yes, Fantastic Beasts. Let's talk about that, because, spoiler alert, I absolutely loved it. I loved it. I am a massive Harry Potter fan, but I have always had a slightly uneasy relationship with the films. I remember very clearly my mum and my nan and one of my mum's friends and her daughter, and we all booked tickets to go and see the first one. And I remember halfway through thinking, I don't love this as much as I thought I would. There was a lot. I think at that point, the third book was out. I'd have to check my dates, but there were a few books out and I loved it so much. It very much lived in my mind. It was very vivid. I knew these characters. I knew who they were. I knew what they were like, how they moved, and it wasn't the world that was in my head on the screen. So, and I think a lot of people may have felt like that. I started a bit of a tradition where I went and saw the rest of the films with a friend of mine who's never read the books. And that was probably the best thing I ever did because she loved them. She just really enjoyed them at face value, and I now own them all. And by about the fifth film, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy these for what they are. And they're fun films. And when I need a little bit of comfort, I'll pop one in rather than, you know, spend a week reading one of the books. So I do have a good relationship with them now, but I don't think they're as good as the books. Probably not alone in thinking that, but there probably are some people who think I'm, you know, very silly. But I just wanted to put that out there as a disclaimer because I was prepared to be disappointed by Fantastic Beasts. I really, really was. I went in knowing nothing whatsoever about the film. I hadn't even watched the most recent trailers because trailers have got a really bad habit lately of just telling you everything that happens in the film. It's like a condensed version of the film and it's a bit like, well, why bother going? So I didn't go. So I had no idea who the characters were. I knew one was a muggle and I was kind of expecting to be a bit meh about the muggle because magic. But I went. And I was just so glad I did. It starts off with the Warner Brothers logo and the dun 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 that you know from Harry Potter swooping past the logo, which is just so familiar if you've seen any of the films. And then that Harry Potter theme slightly changes and becomes the Fantastic Beasts one. And I have to admit, there was a moment of like, wow. Because I've written on my blog about going to the Harry Potter studios and about how that was an oddly emotional experience for me because Harry Potter symbolises a very large chunk of my, not childhood, because I read the first one came out when I was about 10 or 11 and I grew up with those books and they saw me through very difficult times, you know, through bullying and bereavement, and they are therefore very special to me. So it was quite an emotional thing to be able to submerge myself in that world again. And it was amazing. It was so good. And I think the reason for that is because there's no book to compare it to and because J.K. Rowling wrote this story. So it's got that cleverness and that very British kind of flavour that I felt the films lacked. Because the films were being made as the books were coming out, I feel they lost some of the cleverness that was in the books because they didn't know what to keep, what to chuck. But there's definitely that in this film, and there's so much detail, and you can see her influence on every scene. There will be spoilers here, so I'm going to stop you here. If you haven't seen it, please move along. Nothing to see here. You gone? You've seen it. You guys that are left have seen it. Great. In case you don't mind spoilers. I think that I want this on DVD and I want to watch it quite regularly. I actually really loved Jacob the Muggle, or the Nomad as they call them in America. I loved him. I thought he was a fantastic example of a decent man trying to do the right thing in a world he doesn't understand. He's fresh back from the war, he can't get a loan, and he's just decent and good, and he just wants to help, and I just loved him. And I just thought, that's J.K. Rowling's magic though, because if anyone else had written this, he'd just be this foil. He'd be a cipher. He'd be there to make a point about, Muggle wizard relations, because Newt, played by Eddie Redmayne, makes a comment to one of the American characters that he thinks it's just, ridiculous that they have these laws about you're not allowed to have a relationship between a wizard and a Muggle, not friendship, not marriage, nothing. And Jacob could have just been there to kind of symbolise that, but he was a character in his own right. And his relationship with Queenie, who is a Legilimens, was beautiful. It felt so natural. And I think that was a fantastic combination of the writing and the casting, because I actually don't know the actors' names. That's really bad. I'm really sorry. But the actress playing Queenie and the actor playing Jacob had fantastic chemistry. They were amazing, and it didn't feel forced. It felt really natural, and the story between them was beautiful. On the other hand, Queenie's sister, Tina, and Newt, who are quite clearly being set up as a potential romance for future films. The film ends with him saying, "Do you mind if I come back and deliver my book, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, in person?" I don't think they had that same chemistry. They certainly worked well together. I wasn't sat there going, "Well, this is nonsense." They just didn't have that same spark, which is a shame. But yeah, it was so lovely. For me, the most emotional part of the film was the end, where the president believes that the magical world has been revealed to the human world and it can never be put back in its box. But Newt has this incredible creature whose venom he's been studying, and he said, well, actually, this has got really strong obliviate properties, and so he sends one of his other creatures up to create a storm. It's like a storm bird, and he gives it a little vial of the venom, which it breaks in the storm cloud so that this is diluted down and everyone forgets. And because of their laws being very strict, the president said there can be no exceptions, and Jacob needs to forget as well. And he doesn't rail at this. He doesn't kick up a fuss. He doesn't make the big romantic, "But I love Queenie and I want to be with her." None of that. He just goes, "I'm not built for your world, and I have to leave." And he steps out into the rain, and I have to admit I cried. I had a little weep in the cinema because I was like, no, they have to be together, they're meant to be. So that was a bit silly. But I did love that aspect of the film. It was quiet, it was really well done without being, really punched home. Like, this is a really emotional moment, you should feel something here. That's what I think is amazing about J.K. Rowling. I did guess the twist right at the beginning. There was a bit at the beginning where they're talking about Grindelwald. They've got this kind of wall of newspapers, wizarding newspapers, flowing across the screen with all these headlines kind of coming and going in the way they do in the Daily Prophet and other wizarding newspapers. So I knew that Grindelwald was going to make an appearance or be involved in some way. And I did guess at the beginning that Colin Farrell was Grindelwald. purely because of that haircut, because that haircut is nasty. I really don't like that haircut. They've got that haircut in Peaky Blinders and I hate it. I hate it. Rich keeps threatening to have his haircut like that and I can't stand it. I don't, it's just so slicked back and, oh no. Give me messy hair anytime. Give me Newt Scamander's hair anytime, any day of the week. Because usually in films, you can guess exactly who done it, when done it, how done it, all of that immediately. But for me, I don't know if it's because I was enjoying the film so much that I wasn't analysing, or because it was well done, or because I'm just not very good at twists, maybe. But I couldn't figure out which person was creating this this dark force, whether it was Credence or the little girl, or maybe it was the mum, and it kept shifting. I was like, I'm sure it's him, I'm sure it's her, no, it must be her, which was great. And I do think probably if I hadn't been so invested in it, I would have guessed. But I think that's the mark of a great film, if it sweeps you up and you're so in the moment and you just don't think about things like who done it, why done it. You're not sitting there analysing, you're just going with it. And the beasts. How can we talk about Fantastic Beasts and not talk about the beasts? The beasts, probably the weaker part of the plot, in that they just run around, causing havoc, essentially. But I enjoyed it. I can't say that I didn't. The Niffler, this is how much of a fangirl I am. The Niffler appeared and I turned around to Rich and a couple of friends who I was with and I went, that's a Niffler. It's a Niffler. It's going to steal all the gold. That's why it's bad that it's gone in the bank. I'm that person. So obviously I loved the Niffler. He was so cute. He was just adorable. And all the other creatures were just so imaginative. I can't remember what they were called, but I loved the one, like the snake-like dragon that will expand to fill any space. And they trapped it it likes bugs, and they threw a bug into a teapot and it jumped in and it shrank to fill the space. I absolutely loved it. One thing that I keep coming back to is this little hint that we had of Newt's past at Hogwarts. So he is fully supported by Dumbledore, but he was thrown out of Hogwarts because of an incident with a creature and another student that caused another student to be harmed. A little bit like when Draco Malfoy got injured by the hippogriff in the third film, which I think is probably likely to have happened. That this other student hasn't been paying enough attention and the animal's lashed out because, something they've done. That's kind of the way Newt Scamander tells it anyway. And I was kind of thinking we'd see a little bit of Dumbledore, young Dumbledore, but unfortunately not. What we did see was Leaderless Strange. And as we all know, the Lestranges are not good people. But Newt, who has an amazing just like home in this suitcase he carries everywhere, has a picture of her in his little office where he, writes his books and keeps all of the notes about the creatures. And he's got a picture of Leaderless Strange, who we don't know very much about at this moment. We know that Newt is a Hufflepuff, so Hufflepuff pride. I'm also a Hufflepuff. But we know that Leader is a Lestrange. We don't know that she was a Slytherin. She could have also been a Hufflepuff because he said neither of them fitted in. But there's obviously been some disconnect between them. From the way he was talking, it sounds very much like they're not friends anymore. So there's so much there for us to theorise and think about. And this is what is really getting me, because the thing I loved most about the Harry Potter world between books was, you'd get online and you'd talk to people and people would write fan fiction with all their theories, and you could buy, after the 6th book, a t-shirt that says, I trust Severus Snape. And I loved that. I loved that it kind of created conversation and community, and I think that is its power. And for me, I've really enjoyed browsing the internet and trying to find out these theories about who is Leader, were they friends, were they in a more romantic relationship, where is she now, what is she doing, is she part of the Lestrange family, or is she estranged from them in the same way that Sirius was estranged from his family. I'm just really looking forward to finding out more. So yeah, this podcast has unfortunately been the podcast in which I rant and get all heart eye emojied about Fantastic Beasts. I'm sorry, I'm a nearly 30-year-old woman and I probably should have moved on. But as I've said, this is something that I really love, and I'm just so excited to see new, being able to go into a cinema and sit down and not know what's coming is beautiful. I've never had that with a Harry Potter film. I'm really, really looking forward to the next one, and I totally recommend it. And even Rich, who loved Harry Potter as a kid and then got over it, which I didn't, even he thought it was great. So I would heartily recommend it. 5 stars, 10 stars. Go and see it now. Go now. I just want to say a massive thank you for sticking with me through this excitable podcast. Actually, I've been kind of like brimming and excited and bouncy, and I hope that's okay. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for spending some time with me. I'm sorry there won't be a podcast next weekend, but just think of the amount of content that I'll have the following week. I might actually have done some knitting. I might have actual finished objects to show you. So all clouds have a silver lining. So thank you again. Please do like and subscribe, and I will see you next week for another cup of tea. Take care, have a lovely week. Bye.